Thank you very much. It is such an honor to be standing here where so many great speakers have spoken. And today I'm here to share with you my personal journey in artificial intelligence, make some predictions about the future, and point out some issues that we as mankind might face, and give you a few thoughts on how I think we can perhaps overcome that. Okay, so my personal journey started with artificial intelligence 35 years ago. This yellow paper, not nearly as aged as this university, was my application to Carnegie Mellon University when I decided to dedicate my life to the pursuit of artificial intelligence. Because to me at the time, this was a study and an attempt to understand how the human brain worked. And I could think of nothing grander than understanding how the human brain, and I thought that would be the final step in the human journey to understand itself. So that was my essay. And then later in the 80s, I had the fortune to work on the first computer game that defeated the world champion, not Go or chess, but a much smaller game called Othello. And then I had the fortune to work on speech recognition, delivering the first speech recognition at a speaker-independent level as my PhD thesis. Later, I went to work at Apple Computer, and the team that I founded there continued and is currently managing this product Siri that many of you use. So I felt very fortunate to have been a part of the AI revolution. But the AI revolution wasn't always very smooth. AI ran into a lot of problems. At first, people thought AI was figuring out how people thought the if-then-else statements in our head when we made decisions. That turned out not to work. Then people thought AI was all about statistics, collecting data. But then we found that we could not collect or save enough data to make proper predictions. And when I did my PhD thesis, we stored a whole 100 megabytes of data. And that costs a fortune. That cost almost $100,000 for the computer science department to pay for that. And now, of course, we can buy 100 megabytes of data with less than 1 cent. So a lot of the second wave also ran into problems. But recently, we've hit the third wave. So now a lot of people are questioning whether the third wave is real or not. Because the last two times, us AI scientists said we're close to solving the AI problem. We proved ourselves to be wrong. Is this time, the third time, going to be different? And my answer is resoundingly, yes, this time will be different. This time, the algorithm is based on a set of algorithms, but fundamentally, the most core one is called deep learning. And deep learning basically works similar to statistical learning. You take one single domain, a huge amount of data, and a number of outcome labels, and the system trains itself to make stronger predictions for the future. So it is a mathematical system which is learned by looking at examples of data. So when you apply it to the domain of Go, you show it many people playing each other, or in fact AlphaGo 0, which played itself, then it learned from the patterns of playing and then the outcome of winning or losing, and then abstracted a set of mathematical functions that helped it make a move that maximizes its chance of winning. So whenever you have a problem where the outcome can be stated as good or bad, right or wrong, or classified as A or B, or synthesized as something realistic or not, then it's solvable by deep learning. So when you apply it to, let's say, the problem of underwriting loans, you give it examples of people who, with their characteristics financially and otherwise, on whether or not they return the money they borrowed. Then the system will learn to differentiate those who return the money from those who don't. If you train it on stocks that go up versus stocks that go down with all sorts of data, including social network quarterly reports, it will learn which stocks you can buy that will make you money versus lose you money. And for those of you who are Chinese, if you use a product called Meitu, have you heard? It's sometimes in the Western user, it's sometimes called Makeup Plus or Cosmetic Plus. It is a picture that beautifies you. It's an Instagram that works on selfies. And have you wondered how you've become more beautiful over the years? It is because 5 years ago, it didn't have enough training data. And where does it get training data? Every time you take a selfie and beautify yourself, what might you do? You might share it on social network, you might save it, or you might delete it. Then every example of sharing and saving is viewed as a positive exemplar. We want to make more people look like those photos that got saved. And then we want to make people less like those photos that got deleted. So you didn't know it, but you were contributing training data all the time to Meitu. And the same goes with Amazon, Google. Every time you buy a product, Amazon learns more about people like you, what you might buy. Every time you talk to your Echo, it also learns from you, and about people like you. So that is an accumulation of data that helps the deep learning gain experience from training. Now, this experience from training is not infinite. It is limited in 5 ways. It's not like we can be infinitely smart and throw data and it becomes omniscient. It works under 5 conditions. First, you have a huge quantities of training data. Secondly, you have to label that data with the desired outcome. Third, you have to apply it to a single domain. This is actually very limiting. So a AlphaGo cannot just go to become your Amazon buyer, and your Amazon Echo cannot just be turned into your Meitu beautifier. Every product is one single domain. So it's not a one-size-fits-all. There's no common sense. There's no cross-domain. There's no true understanding, but if it's one domain at a time. Number 4, you need a lot of computing resources. And number 5, you need some AI experts to tune the system. So there you have it. That's basically the capabilities and limitations of AI. Some people separate weak AI from strong AI. Weak AI is, as I described, single domain, optimized on data, better than people. Strong AI is more like artificial general intelligence, or AGI, in the sense of what we see in science fiction, where the computer does everything we do and can go cross-domain for common sense, understanding, analytical, planning, and some people even think self-awareness and emotion. So when it exhibits all that, it is a pretty scary future. We have sometimes been brainwashed by science fiction that is an eventual outcome, but in fact today it is more like fantasy. It's not that it can never be achieved, it's just that the number of engineering breakthroughs needed to achieve it appears to be decades, if not centuries, away. So I think we're going to focus today on the weak AI, or deep learning-like algorithms, which are already very, very powerful. So these types, so Singularity is something I'm not going to talk about. I don't believe in, it's not near term, but single domain AI optimization can already do wonderful things, create a lot of value, and also replace a lot of jobs and tasks. Here are some examples you can see in customer service and telemarketing and accounting and reporters. Many of these jobs can and will be done better by machines that optimize single domain at a time. Let me tell you a little bit about the phases of artificial intelligence and how it's going to hit this world. I think there are 4 waves that will hit simultaneously, some earlier, some later. The first wave is called Internet AI. That is the internet giants who have more data than anybody else. And they use that data to know everything about us, and we're labeling data for free for them every day. The Economist covered this week has the 3 American giants, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, on the powers that they have because they have more data than anyone else. They understand more about you than your government, probably than your spouse, and arguably more than yourselves. And don't doubt that. The amount of data is huge, and these internet companies will continue to come up. That is the first type of AI. Because internet has the most data, and they're automatically labeled through usage of the apps. The number 2 type of applications are business-oriented applications. This is when a bank an hospital, an insurance company, accumulates data about you and applies that data to its business process to make better business decisions. Should it give you a loan or not? Is this credit card usage fraudulent potentially? How should it recommend your asset allocation? And whether you're the type of customer to recommend this new fund or not. So those types of financial determination, whether to give you an insurance, whether this insurance claim is fraudulent or legitimate, whether a hospital scan shows signs of a cancer or cardio problems, those kinds of recognition tasks within the domains of business using data that's been accumulated is the second type of AI. And that's surely going to generate a lot of value and replace a lot of jobs. The third type of AI is getting data that didn't exist before. Contrasted with the first two waves of AI, the third wave is digitizing the physical world, collecting data where there wasn't data before, and creating usage scenarios that didn't exist before. Think about Amazon Echo collecting speech from our living rooms. We didn't think we were going to let them do that, but we are. And that data can be used for interesting applications. Look at airports that have lots of cameras. Those cameras are recognizing faces. And the face recognition can be used to prevent terrorists from entering the plane. It can also be used to approve your spending. So those types of collection, it can also be used by retail stores to better understand you. Online, every click and behavior is captured for better understanding to target you. Now offline, with cameras and sensors, you can also be captured and tracked, and that can be applied to real uses that will help the companies make money. That has applications in retail, clinics, hospitals, schools, everywhere. It turns offline into online, and people are tracked every minute of every day. That certainly brings up lots of privacy concerns, but it also gives people the opportunity to trade their privacy for convenience. So that is a bartering process that will happen at different paces in different countries, probably faster in China than, let's say, in here, but really creating new usage scenarios never before possible that are one-on-one targeting, because the systems knows who you are, it knows what you did, it knows what you want, and therefore it can make money for the merchant and it can give you a better product or service. Now, if you think that's scary, the fourth level is even scarier. That's really science fiction. While I continue to assert that machines will have no feelings and no self-awareness, they will move. Movement is not impossible. It's a little bit difficult, it's harder than software, but machines that move will go from household robots that can wash your dishes to commercial robots that can be a security guard, to industrial robots that will make the next iPhone with no human participation, to autonomous vehicles, to drones. And these will provide incredible convenience, free us from routine jobs, and also take away so many jobs that are manual labor related. So these four waves each will create an economic value in the order of trillions and add to our GDP by 2030 on the order of 10% per wave. And it will remove jobs also at similar rates. So these are the positive and negative impacts of AI. In terms of transformative wealth aggregation, don't take my word for it. Let's go for the most conservative people possible, PwC. They tell us that AI will create about $7 trillion of value for China and about $20 trillion for the world. So let's just take that as a minimum point. Next. And then in terms of job replacement, a lot of optimists will tell us that AI will not take away jobs, because look at history. Every time there's a technology invention, it creates more jobs than it replaces. But do not believe these economists, because it is not as simple of repetition in history. The invention of AI is at least as large as three of the largest revolutions, technology revolutions ever. the creation of the steam engine, the invention of electricity, and the computer revolution. Each of those has had a different impact on jobs. Electricity and assembly lines definitely created jobs, but it actually made jobs lower paying. Same with computerization. It uplifted people's skill sets, but it also lowered the average pay. So each one had a different impact, and AI is different yet from those two again, because it is a server-based technology running on amazing NVIDIA and Google TPU power that can be applied simultaneously to thousands of industries that can instantaneously do a better job than humans do in thousands of professions. Certainly, not every job will instantly be replaced. Some jobs will have tasks that are replaced, not the whole job. For example, face recognition is very accurate, but it won't replace the security guard completely, but surely there will be fewer security guards with face recognition and ID checking being taken care of. Loan underwriting will be completely gone because machines are just better at the quantitative problem. Secondary stock trading will largely be gone because the job that research analysts are doing, recommending stocks, are an unnatural task for human beings. It is a quantitative task better done by machines. Some jobs will be a human-machine symbiotic combination. A doctor's job may involve the doctor applying his or her human skills and communication and extracting symptoms that the patient didn't volunteer and offering that to a machine learning that gives recommendations that the human combines with his or her skill set for a higher degree of survival rate and treatment. But not most jobs are sheer replacement. A few jobs are human-machine symbiotic. So don't let the economists or the optimists fool you that the AI revolution will just can be hand-waved in terms of job creation. So I think the biggest benefit of AI revolution is the wealth creation. The biggest challenge is the removal and displacement of jobs. And when jobs are replaced, it is not simply a matter of how to find someone a new job. It is not just the loss of income, but the loss of meaning. Because throughout the Industrial Revolution, the capitalists have trained and brainwashed us to believe that the work ethic of working hard and getting your reward being having wealth and having respect in the community, is the essence of life. And that work ethic cannot be the central reason of existence for human beings, but most people on this earth believe that. And now when you say, well, you work hard and get reward, but if you do routine jobs, sorry, you don't get reward because robots would do a better job. A lot of people will not only lose the income, they will lose the meaning. So we're facing a serious crisis in terms of the loss of meaning. And that, to me, not the dystopia, is the largest challenge for the AI revolution. And very much related to that is the rich getting richer. The techno elites will have so much power. The techno giants will have so much power. I understand you're going to debate whether have the techno giants are a good thing or not for the world. And I surely stand on the side of not. I think powerful companies that have so much data and that can turn data into power, into value, into money, into more servers, into more smart people, into more data, that virtuous cycle somehow must be disrupted. Otherwise, they will have so much power, they'll be more powerful than countries. Countries won't know how to manage them, and they will know more about us than we know about ourselves. Now, that's perhaps unavoidable at kind of a diversified level. There could be 100 companies, each knows a lot about us, about something, but if one company or 5 companies owns all the data in the world, that is very dangerous. And that also relates back to the wide disparity of the techno elite and what they own in the society in wealth and power versus the poor person whose job was replaced by AI or robot. So that is the issue that we face. And so how will I suggest a solution for the job displacement? I have not been much help in the first 50 years of my life because I have been the poster child of the work ethic I just described. I was the hardest worker that I know. I wrote 3 books, each of which describes the very work ethic that I am saying is dangerous for mankind. I believe if you work really hard, you be the best you can be, you'll change the world. And I wrote books that sold millions of copies that many of you perhaps read when you were in elementary schools. I still believe that we want to change the world, but the work ethic under which that I did to the expense of my own personal life and my family is something I deeply regret. Back when I was incredibly working hard, I would measure every little thing by how much impact can I make on the world. I would judge, should I go to Oxford or Cambridge? Where can I make a bigger impact? I would judge, should I write a book on this topic or that topic so I can sell more copies? I would measure, should I talk to this entrepreneur or that entrepreneur? Who's got the higher IQ? And it's become a very, very pragmatic and heartless way of running my life. Similarly, I would put work above family. I would wake up every day in the middle of the night so I can answer all my emails. I answer email during the day within 5 minutes. I answer emails at night within 3 hours because I wake up automatically at 2 and 5 to answer all my emails so that my colleagues in the US, when I was at Google, would feel that I work hard and that I don't slow down the process, so that my employees would feel they have to work equally hard. And that has been the work ethic that drove me until one day when something terrible happened to me. I was discovered to have lymphoma, 4th stage lymphoma. This is my MRI from about 4 years ago. There were over 20 tumors discovered, and the doctors wasn't sure I had very long to live. And when that moment hit, instantly my life basically played like a movie in my eyes, and I felt every move I'd made that I thought was so clever was completely wrong. That I had ignored my family. My father had passed away without me ever saying to him how much I loved him and what he meant to me. My mother no longer remembered me. I could spend time with her, but we could never have a meaningful conversation again. And that every time I had a vacation time, I used some of it to accompany my parents so that I would lessen my guilt, not so that I would do my duty as their son. I treated my wife and kids as family members that would give me a passing grade, and then I feel that was enough. Everything else I gave to work. My priorities were always with work. I remember the day that my first daughter was born, I was struggling on whether to leave the delivery room because I had a presentation to the CEO of Apple. I was only lucky that she was born a little bit early enough, otherwise I honestly would not have been present. So such was the life of a workaholic, but getting lymphoma turned out to be the most useful lesson that I received in my life because I got the priorities right. There's a book that I read during my illness written by Bronnie Ware, someone who took care of people in their deathbeds. And what she said is very clear. Watching 2,000 people facing death, none of them had a wish that they worked harder. Not one of them wished they spent more time working, became more famous or wealthy. The number one wish that people had in their deathbed was that they wished they had more time to spend, or they had spent more time with the people they love or the people who loved them. So that brought meaning to my life. That gave me a strong realization to determine that if I could be cured, this is how I'm going to change and live my life. So fortunately, my treatment was successful, so I can be with you here tonight, and that I live my life differently. I still work very hard, but I always spend at least 1 week per month with my family. And that when I spend time with them, I'm not on my phone, I'm not answering WeChat and email. I am with them at the times when they needed me. When my daughter takes off time from her college, I take the month off, or at least 2 weeks off with her. I spend time with my friends, and I feel that the love that I give and the love that I receive has made me much more complete. And it gave me a real meaning of life compared to the previous robot that I was in turning myself into an Iron Man working machine. So in this realization came a belief that if we all had that realization, maybe the AI-based world won't be so bad. There might be half the people who in 15 years will lose the jobs that they do today. The routine jobs would be replaced by AI. But there will be something else that they can do that will not only pay, give them the means, but also gives them the meaning. And that meaning is about compassion and love. This is something that AI cannot do. We saw that when AlphaGo defeated Ke several months ago. Ke came to his tears, and everybody was on his side because of his humanity. And we also realized that AlphaGo had no happiness from winning, and nor did it want to hug anybody after it won the games. And that sense of self-awareness and love and happiness is something machines can never have. And that we have to come to realization that before we worry about machines becoming human, we have to be careful that we don't get turned into machines. And if we think about a profession like a doctor, if someone goes through the experience I did, imagine a cold robotic doctor that says, you have fourth stage lymphoma, and you have a 26% chance of living 5 years. How would the patient feel when that happens? What we need is a humanistic doctor, a doctor with compassion, a doctor that talks about, look, this can be treated. Kai-Fu Lee had the same lymphoma, and he is well. If you follow the same regimen of treatment he did, you should have a good shot. And the doctor should visit the patient at home, give him her confidence. And we know through the placebo effect that when people are given that support and confidence, they have a higher chance of recovery. So that really gives us, points the way that we need more people to be doctors. We need more people to be compassionate doctors. We need to infuse all the professions with caring for people. We need to create new jobs that are about caring for people. If you read about the #1 job shortage in America, it is about caretakers. It is a job that is very much needed. When people ask me, when can we make a robot that can take care of the elderly, I think that is an immoral question to ask. How is it not our responsibility to take care of our parents? And even if we cannot take care of our parents 24 hours a day, we should at least afford a human to take care of our parents. I had a friend who once created a small robot for elderly companionship. And it had all kinds of functions, watching movies, getting movie tickets, and ordering takeout, all kinds of capabilities with the robot. And guess what function got used the most? It was customer service. And guess what customer service the elderly wanted? They just wanted someone to talk to. And that is the abandonment that we humans do not deserve to live if all we can do is put a robot in front of the elderly. So that job of the caretaker is a noble profession. It's a profession that should be honored in our society. It should not be looked down upon as a low-paying service job. So we need to create more jobs like that, and also jobs of happiness, a wonderful concierge, a good tour guide, a wonderful masseuse, someone who comes and helps clean up your closet every season, someone who comes to your home and cooks a wonderful meal. These are the human jobs, human touching jobs that we can finally afford to have, because AI will make all this money. And then we can turn that money and tax those techno elites and create jobs like this. And I think that will be a world that we can all look forward to, is a peaceful coexistence of AI tools that we use for creativity, for value creation, for smart jobs, for the innovation, for the scientific engineering jobs, for storytelling, for great PR, marketing, entertainment, movies. So that will be one segment on the top what we call creative jobs using AI as tools. And then there will be many more service jobs that are really jobs of compassion, and that we need to make sure these jobs get created. We need government policies, we need a venture capital ecosystem that fund these companies. They are for profit, but they may not become unicorns. And they will create these jobs that will employ people, and most importantly, not just give people a payment for their services, but bring meaning back to their lives. So it is with this realization that I understood 35 years ago I was totally mistaken. I went after trying to understand how our brain worked, and I thought that was what AI is about. In the last 35 years, I am most proud of my colleagues who have made AI incredibly capable in single domains, are able to do jobs and tasks routinely for us. And I think that is an important thing for mankind, because it is never the intent for human beings to exist in this life for routine jobs. Once we are freed from routine jobs, we can go back to thinking deep thoughts, to love our hobbies, to share compassion with each other, and to make the world a place with much more positive energy. And finally, the realization I have that I was so wrong is that the most important organ that we have really isn't our brain, but our heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for that incredibly inspiring speech. As someone who played such a vital role in Microsoft, Apple, and Google, what do you think are the key factors behind creating a successful tech giant?
Well, every tech giant is different. So I think it's it's too simplistic to think there's one formula. There are some commonalities. There's always a founder who is not a normal professional manager. There's a founder who does not believe in defeat, does not accept no for an answer, insists that his or her vision is correct, and goes after it with a strong degree of confidence and vehemence until he or she succeeds. That part is common in all of these companies. And then each company has maybe a little bit different culture. I think it's important for each company to know what its culture is, so that you can build a company around it. You can hire people who are like that, and then the people will bond and work with each other through thick or thin. So for example, Microsoft's culture is building an incredibly complex product, so complex with so many people that others can't do it. That's very admirable. Apple's culture is around wowing the user and really putting the user needs in front of everything else. Very admirable. Google's belief is open sharing of information through technologies done by small teams of super smart people, so that they don't have to go through inefficiency of bureaucracy. So all very different beliefs. So I would advise, when you go out and seek the tech giant you may want to work for, think not only about how great their products are, how high their stock prices are, but whether their core values and their culture matches you.
Thank you. So after your distinguished careers at these firms, you have now founded your own investment firm. What impact do you hope that this firm will have on the technology world?
I founded Sinovation Ventures 8.5 years ago when I felt the ecosystem was lacking in the early stage, that entrepreneurs needed help to get started, and they were taken advantage of by mid-late stage VCs. And I wanted to build a company that will be pro-entrepreneurial, that will supply the much needed know-how by early entrepreneurs who often have a lot of shortcomings. I wanted to help fill those gaps and increase their chance of success and accelerate their speed to build a team and then build a product. And that continues to be something that drives us. And in fact, I think coming to the UK this time, I also see so much brilliance and energy, but I also see certain gaps in the VC ecosystem. So I hope there's someone here also hoping to that's able to fill those gaps.
So you've spoken about Chinese innovative industries as rivaling those of the US. Do you think that government censorship puts this position at risk?
censorship for different countries? Or?
No, within China. How do you feel about the fact that government censorship might put the innovation within China at risk when rivaling big companies in the US?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the West. I obviously would prefer environments where I can speak my thoughts. And I think countries, I think we sometimes assume countries have laws for bad reasons. China is a developing country. The level of awareness and understanding is not very high. So I think its views based on cultural tradition on how to teach the kids growing up is very different. I think it's hard to put simply right or wrong label. It is a different culture, different form of government. But to answer your question about innovation, I actually think most people in Silicon Valley and the West are overstating dramatically the requirement for freedom of expression as a fundamental requirement to innovate and create business value. I think if you have an environment in which you know what is legal and what is not, every environment is like that, you just don't venture into the things that are not legal. That's the same way in US, UK, or China. And that is not a fundamental suppression for the company to succeed. It is perhaps correlated with innovation, but it is not 100% correlation. I think the existence proof of so many innovative companies in China, I think disproves that statement as a fundamental assumption and theorem. If you look at the Chinese ecosystem today, China has the most innovative payment system. It allows 650 million people to pay each other without commission, peer-to-peer, instantaneously, and at 15 cents per at as low as 15-cent level of microtransaction. And that is incredibly innovative and uplifting in helping other people create more companies. I just saw a Mobike outside the Oxford campus. That's one of our portfolio companies. It wouldn't be possible without this method of payment. China has a strong personalizable news service that is addictive, that people are on it 70 minutes a day. That is more personalized and more capable than Western products. China has live streaming and many new business models. So I think there's no shortage of innovation, and I think it would be wrong to assume that the lower level of freedom of expression has a directly negative outcome in terms of product innovation.
Okay. How do you think that regulation can be best tailored to favor innovation? And where do you think the West does go wrong, where Eastern companies have been able to innovate quicker and develop faster?
Yeah, that's another good question about policies. I think people in the UK love to talk policies. Wherever I go, people talk about policies regarding privacy and security and bias, and how does each person control his or her own data? How do we deal with the trolley problem and autonomous driving dangers? How do we minimize that? And health records and the like. And I think that is the culture of UK, and that is why UK is the great country that it is. But in China, there is a techno-utilitarian approach that basically says, let's get the product out there and iterate and collect data and fix things when they break, and be very fast iterating and willing to change the laws when things are proven some other way. And again, neither one is right or wrong. But I think in terms of making AI progress, I think analysis paralysis will be the Western world's biggest danger to fall behind in the technology competition.
Okay. So in your speech, you mentioned the threat of people losing their jobs through technological progress. And in recent years, we've seen the rise of populists running on a platform of protecting people whose jobs are threatened by this technological progress. How do you suppose that governments and businesses, I guess, might be able to tackle these issues whilst preventing entrepreneurship from being sacrificed?
I think we have to look to the future, not to the past. I think we need to protect jobs, but not jobs of the past. If a job is going to be threatened by a technology, it is going to be replaced sooner or later. The later you let it happen by artificial means will only make your country fall behind countries that are willing to take the big hit right now. So I think a proactive government should support technology, let the jobs that need to be replaced, but put programs in place that create other jobs that are longer lasting and sustainable and help the transition and the social welfare and the support and the retraining so that a very good transition of the workforce takes place, not simple preservation of the old jobs. If a job is meant to be gone, it's better to let it be gone right now and get to the efficient technological solution and help those people move on to their new jobs. I think that is what I like to see in progressive governments.
And at the moment, do you feel that that's something lacking around the world, or do you feel that one particular region is doing it better than another?
I think Europe, well, you're not a part of Europe, but I think Europe and UK tend to be a little bit conservative in accepting the inevitability of technology revolutions. I heard some surveys where half the people want to slow down technology. I think that is not only impossible to do, but detrimental for any country to do, because it will set back your economy. So I think Silicon Valley is forward-thinking. I think China is forward-thinking. I think the whole world should be forward-thinking, because the pace of technological change is so fast that the moment you think you want to stifle innovation and slow down technological progress, it's going to pull back the whole economy, and that's not something that any country can afford right now.
And do you think that this fear of innovation within Europe and the UK stems from government or business, or maybe just kind of culture of society?
Well, I think the UK is an incredibly innovative country, going back from philosophy, innovation, all the scientists, and even in the field of AI. I mean, DeepMind is the best company in the world, probably, in terms of AI innovation. So the roots are definitely here. I think what the UK currently is challenged are, one is, I think, a relatively protectionist, conservative mindset. That is dangerous to progress, as I mentioned. Two, I think too much government policy and control, that may slow things down. Three, there is not a strong enough VC ecosystem to help the new companies get started, and entrepreneurial mindset. And I think the potential is definitely here, and I think those issues need to be addressed. And I think there's a fourth one, maybe. The fact that UK is a small market. It's actually unfortunate that the UK is not that small. If UK were a smaller market as Israel or Singapore, people would start thinking global, would start thinking about building products for China or for US. But UK is kind of a medium market, and that gets people to think, okay, I'm going to start the company for UK first, then we'll figure out how to go abroad. But the pace of change is so fast. If you don't start your product on a large market, then you're going to be copied, or you're going to have competitors by the time you enter the large market. So I think switching the mindset to maybe thinking more like Israel or Singapore and less like the British Empire, that would be helpful.
Okay. So what would be, if you had to give a piece of advice to students here today who are maybe interested in pursuing a career in technology, what would be advice that you would give them?
I think the first thing is, given there isn't a strong ecosystem and aren't a bunch of great startups to join, I think that people who want to go into tech should go into a great company, a company like Google, a company like Apple or Facebook or DeepMind, and learn all that you can. And then I think when you become surrounded by brilliant people and culture, you will figure out what it is next that you will want to do. Because I think universities, Oxford is an amazing place in a university, but it is a little bit far from the hubs of technology. So I think get yourself closer by going to a great technical company to work. And probably slightly preferable to go to the headquarters of that company. That means for many of you, since language isn't a problem, going to work in the United States. I mean, with full intent of coming back, but I think the Silicon Valley really has a lot of magic. I think that is worth to be surrounded by it, learn from it, and then if you're destined to start a company, that kind of surrounding will give you just the kind of training you need. And also consider, if you're really going to go to Silicon Valley, you might join a startup there. I think the ecosystem there is strong, and you will, I think you were giving me example at dinner that sometimes these internships and first jobs are as much for telling you what you don't want to do as it is for what you do want to do. So I think use all your internships to go to the best technical companies in the world and not limit yourselves to the UK, and that will give you a lot stronger hints than what you can learn from the media, internet, or even the professors here.
Great, so on that note, I think we've got time for a couple of questions from the audience, if that's okay. So if you'd like to ask a question, raise your hand. The member in the aisle right there, someone wants to, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. And I got one question for the technical part. So you said a lot about the data-driven algorithms about deep learning, but like most of the well-established learning now, it depends on the huge amount of data set. Like, these are two major drawbacks may come in. Like, first of all, if I'm looking at a single cat, I'll be able to recognize at a second time. But like for this kind of small data set, it's impossible to train good neural network or deep learning stuff to recognize it. And also, like, because you need a huge data set, the data set may itself not be accurate. For example, I'm working on a medical data set, and some of the medical data set, the label may be like 80% accurate or 70% of accurate. So if you train on this kind of data set, the algorithm, the best output could be just lower than that kind of accuracy. So how do you think that the future, like whatever it is, deep learning or whatever it is, whatever we may call it, this kind of a new algorithm will tackle these kind of problems? Thank you.
Okay. So it's about having small data sets is no good. You need large data sets, but if they're not accurate, what to do? There are many applications that are self-labeling that don't require any labeling. For example, if we were going to make, I didn't give you this example, but we invested in a company that's going to give they gave about 25 million loans last year. So it's a phenomenally successful company, and the loans were made by an AI algorithm, not by a human. But how would you train such an algorithm? If you have loan officers label each person as loanable, not loanable, then there could be a lot of errors and judgment and bias all built in. But if you actually train the system based on actual outcome, that is, if you really have the guts to give out those 25 million loans and realizing you're going to lose a bunch of money by people who don't pay you back, that is the best kind of data, because the people who don't pay back are the negative exemplars. The people who pay back are the positive exemplars. So find ways within your domain that the data can be automatically labeled by an outcome, not by some human expert applying subjective and potentially biased judgment. But some things still have to be done by hand. Let's say, face recognition. You have to label this is John, this Mary's face, and so on. For that, there are many data sets available on the internet that can be used. For example, the COCO competition, the ImageNet competition, the Stanford reading comprehension competition. And also, we funded something called the AI Challenger competition. In each of these competitions, we spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, cleansing the database, purely for the purpose that we don't think students and researchers should waste their time label the data. So I think it is better that you use a standard data set that's already been cleaned, paid by us, and that you don't have to waste time labeling it, and it's already pre-labeled and accurate, and that you also have a benchmark of other research who've used the same data set, so you know how you stand. So I would strongly advocate that for your research, you pick a standard data set and not take something new, because the cost to label it for you is not worth it as a student. And then there are these standard sets that exist, and you might as well use it.
Thank you. Should we go to the question over here, just over there?
Hi. Do you think it will never be possible for us to create robots that's able to love?
Robots that are able to love us, and that we're able to love?
Robots that are able to love us and love each other, like love robots.
I see. There is the pretense of love, right? I think copying human emotion can be done. I think you already see little robots made by Sony and SoftBank that are pretty cute, are somewhat lovable. They exhibit somewhat human emotions, but it really isn't real. See, I think for the human, part of it is the human-human spiritual connection that's connected us and bonded us for thousands of years. It's just not there with a robot. Partly it's because we know in our hearts, even if they fake it pretty good, they're still faking it. It is not real. It is just pretending. Plus, I think even if they do a good job faking it, they're going to mess up maybe one time out of, let's say, 50. And imagine if you had a beloved boyfriend who is a wonderfully, who is a robot, who's wonderful, tender, supportive, but one time out of 50, he just goes nuts and says something totally out of the blue, and it shows totally no sensibilities and no love and ridiculous. Well, will you keep that boyfriend? Probably not. So I would say the bar is pretty high for love, right? If I have a customer service engine that makes one mistake out of 50, that's okay. If I make a loan officer that makes one mistake out of 50, that's okay. But for love, it's something that needs to be real and from the heart and eternal, and you cannot make silly mistakes that are ridiculous. So I think it's really not possible to do it on a general basis. Having said that, I have absolutely no doubt that the movie Her will come true for certain people who crave that kind of conversational, imaginative, anti-human kind of love. So there will be certain people who will fall in love with machines. There's no doubt that will happen, but I would argue it's a very small minority.
Thank you. I think we've got time for one more question. Go to the lady in the aisle over there. Yeah.
So as a student in the Oxford Internet Institute, throughout the past half year, I have been hearing so many one-sided and biased criticism saying that many the social credit system in China, such as the Sesame credit by Alibaba, have the issue of discriminating people from accessing different public services and also assigning people identity and score without giving the right of explanation. So what is your opinion on these kind of AI-based social credit system, and what do you want to respond to these kind of biased, one-sided criticism by the West?
It's against Sesame credit in particular?
Yes, and it's also saying, I think there's also some bias report by the West news saying that this kind of the third-party system is tied to the government surveillance. I think these are pretty biased and not true. So what is your response, and what's your opinion on AI-based criticism?
Well, in part, I sympathize with the attack because that shows you the power of the internet giants. I don't think any one company should have that much absolute power over the future of people's credits. On the other hand, I haven't checked my Sesame credit. I don't know how good it is. But I actually believe Alibaba can do a very credible job that's better than, say, the American credit score. Why is that? Because, well, it's all numbers, right? If you look at an American credit score that gives you a high likelihood of getting a mortgage or not, or getting a credit card or not, it is based on arbitrary numeric addition based on your previous behavior of whether you paid back something or whether you, how much income you have, how many times you changed your dress. They have some ridiculously humanly created numerics that basically linearly add up a bunch of random numbers. That cannot be a better credit score than a deep learning machine that is trained on real data. So Can each have some bias? Yes. Can each algorithm be improved? Yes. But I think the existing credit score is ridiculously simple, and I think we should be ashamed as AI scientists if we can't do 100 times better than them. And now, having said that, would Sesame credit or some such credit system have flaws or biases built in, and how can we remove them? I think there can be efforts made to remove the bias. The largest bias is human subjectivity. So to the extent there's human labeling, that's what will perpetuate bias, because humans are subjective and they make mistakes. So the more it is based on objective data, the less bias there can be. You could also make a point that certain credit scores will discriminate against certain race, gender, age category, and so on, because those are provided as features that the credit can discriminate against. For example, if older people, I use that as an example because I fall into the category. if older people don't repay loans as much, then it gives less loans to older people. Well, that seems biased. Well, if you really, really feel that way, if there's a societal consensus that age discrimination is hurting the progress of the human race, then remove age as a parameter. The system will still operate. So I think the machine learning gives us the ability to keep everything objective and quantitative and remove the items that we think we need to do so-called reverse discrimination to ensure the lack of bias. So it's all very doable within our quantitative system. And yes, any study can look into specific companies and products and say they're flawed, but we know the system is better and it can be fixed. I would also finally warn against removing too many features in order to remove bias, because if there are 2,000 features and you start saying, well, race needs to be removed, gender needs to be removed, age needs to be removed, address needs to be removed, zip code needs to be removed, and when you remove the system into nothingness, then the deep learning won't work at all. So I think we have to strike a balance with removing some features that you think are truly harmful, but really letting machine learning run its full power. And as long as things are based on objective, real outcomes and data, and not human subjectivity, I believe the systems will prevail and do better than people in terms of less bias.
Well, thank you for your question, and indeed, please could you all join me in thanking Dr. Lee for what's been truly incredible event.